Yeah, cool. We got it. All right, so down here, today we're on episode 2, and I want you to think about your favorite movie. Tell me the entire plot beat by beat. That takes a lot of work, doesn't it? So, in this case, I want you to think about the main character from your favorite movie. A lot easier. For me, it was the Iron Giant, so the main character is the Iron Giant. Um, some people might say it's Mowgli, but hey, I think it's the Iron Giant. It's in the title. That's not an accident. We don't actually remember movies, we remember the people, or at least the illusion, the idea of the people they create. There's sometimes not necessarily a story that's exactly you bit for bit. When I watch The Matrix, I see so many similarities between me and Neo, but the only thing that I really found different was I don't wear shades that often. That's the truth. Everything else, spot on, same exact life experiences. Like, there's not a single thing that doesn't match besides the shades. Welcome back to the human story. Today we're on episode 2, and it's all about human nature and character development. Last episode we talked about why storytelling works at all. We talked about the narrative paradigm. I want you to think of it as if a story was an engine or a car, a vehicle. The story would be the vehicle, but character development is the engine. That's what keeps the whole thing moving. There's no story without people to relate to, or at least ideas to relate to. Oftentimes, characters are mirrors of human nature. You don't see a character that has so many different emotions and so many different complex feelings. Writers usually write characters to be battling one challenge. So you might have someone whose hardest trait may be love, guilt, ambition, fear, loyalty, and they amplify that through the story, and then they get that tested. And then what happens when you're watching the story and you find yourself convicted? You say, what would I do in this situation? One of my favorite movies of all time is Dope. And it's about a young boy who's trying to make it in the world. A really cool coming of age story. But he's put in these real world scenarios that aren't too drawn out for movie aspect, but pretty real. And throughout the entire movie, I questioned myself on what would I do in this situation. And because I was thinking that the entire movie, I felt more connected to the movie. And that's part of how writers write. Sometimes we call that projection, and that's kind of like the cogs of the engine. Uh, when you're looking at character development, you have to question what would I do. You have to see yourself in that character's shoes to feel as connected as you think you need. Let's talk about ambition. Anakin Skywalker, his entire arc is about what happens when a good trait, something that he's wanting to have control over the love, he wants to have control over power and the things that he loves, when you attach fear to it. So that's why when you see his fall, a lot of people don't say it's a tragedy villain story. It's more just a tragedy. You know, they don't see him as a villain. They see him as human nature and the way things can go wrong. Let's talk about the ordinary hero. Prime example. If you love Marvel, you know there's 1,000 talks about this. Is Hawkeye worth anything? Everybody says, "Oh no, he's the coolest. He could do this." Because when you're battled up against so many people who have Hulk, Thor, other worldly powers, and you're just some guy with an arrow, what are you gonna do? He's the grounding character of Marvel. He's the person that, if somebody doesn't see themselves as a superhero, they see themselves as an ordinary man. Could I do this? That's who he is. And that's also another character development, the ordinary hero. All of us kind of relate to the idea of I didn't want this versus I was born for this. A lot of times we don't get asked to be in life, but we do the best with what we have, as opposed to saying, oh, I was brought into this world to do this exact thing. Now, if you know your purpose like that, shouts out to you. But a lot of people in the world don't know that. Let's talk about loyalty and the conflict with morality. Michael Corleone. No one knocks him for loving his family so much. They knock him for not having anything to challenge that, to where the love for your family goes so far to where it corrupts you. I'm going to love my family so much, I'm going to protect them. On the other hand, I'm going to love my family so much that I'm going to become the most corrupt person in the world. So it's like, I love you. I love you so much, too much. Then you have fear of your own nature. A prime example of this would be Frozen. The entire movie, Elsa's fighting with her own nature, and it's about not really knowing yourself and not really wanting to know yourself. You're suppressing a part of yourself that doesn't have the ability to be suppressed. You got to think everything you touch turns to ice. Not only are you suppressing yourself, you're isolating yourself. So this entire movie was about her character development and owning who she is. Because owning who you are doesn't necessarily mean kicking everybody else out. As you can see from the end of the movie, by her owning who she is, she was able to build an ice rink and a castle and all this other shit that other people could enjoy. That's about owning yourself. Don't fear your own nature. Character development. The next one I would say would be redemption through sacrifice. Prime example for that would be Tony Stark from Marvel. Going back to Marvel, greatest production company. It's all about redemption through sacrifice. He starts off and you're like, oh, he's just some rich guy. He's a rich guy with no friends. He's a rich guy who ends up losing the love of his life because he's trying to hold on to a love of a regular life while trying to be a superhero without having any real powers besides his mind. Right? So throughout the entire movie, you see how he tries to be good and loses everything that's been good to him. He loses his friends. He loses Captain America. He loses Piper. So it's like there's a constant battle through trying to do good. It almost seems like he feels bad for his wealth in a sense. He feels bad for the things that he's able to do. With great power comes great responsibility, but also great sacrifice. And we see that. And that's exactly why a lot of times when we see Tony Stark, we can kind of relate to that wanting to be great. We relate to that wanting to do the best we can and sometimes just not getting the credit. I'll be honest, the thing that brings all these together is that character development isn't necessarily a human explanation. It isn't like, oh, how do we make this person seem the most human? We're going to take this character and they're going to be housed. The house is going to be that human trait, and they will never escape that. Tony Stark, billionaire. In a lot of cases, people think with enough money you can escape most of your problems. He could not escape his house. Elsa literally had to build her house inside of her house. So it's all of these different emotions that we aren't able to escape from, but they're amplified for you to relate to them. That's character development. Why this matters beyond the screen is it allows you to test yourself. You get a beautiful display, multi-million-dollar display of a human trait being tested, and it allows you to test yourself at a distance, still getting a different lesson, but you're going to get the same feeling. That's why I don't look like Anakin. I don't even look like Elsa, but I might cry at the movie because, hey, I can see myself in their battles. It's just like why people go see scary movies. Nowadays, there's so much anxiety built into living in America. You got to make sure this is good, this is good, this is good. And also, you might not have enough money to pay for this, that, and the third. So you're built up with this anxiety. You have all these pressures on you, so you go see a scary movie. And what this scary movie does, it allows you to take all this anxiety and this question on what's right, because it's life or death, and everything feels like life or death. You're able to take that, test yourself with that anxiety through the screen from a distance. That's why by the end of the movie, you feel so much more relieved and therapeutic because you were able to get all that anxiety up through the screen and release it in that movie theater. So character development, it really is, it's not about the character. It's about traits that we're proud of, traits that we're afraid of. It's about human nature. This is also a bridge to the next episode. Because once you have a character, once you have a story, now you have to build around that. It kind of moves away from being a writer. Now you're a craftsman. Now we're talking cinematography. We're talking music. We're talking location. All of this is going to help hit the point even more. How do we display this emotion on an amplified scale? So many episodes or so many movies are what they are because of the soundtrack. Think about Pirates of the Caribbean. Being out in the ocean is, besides the waves, is pretty quiet. But now you throw in a Mozart beat and you get Dutch angles and it's so much more impactful. That's what the next episode is about. Why that works, why that matters.